Hello everybody, this is Don back with the next progress report on the Corsair. Should be the last one for the week until next weekend. Last video I'd mentioned I was having issues with no spark or any outputs from the new computer that's going to run the ignition timing. So yesterday I had to do some running around, bill paying, and had to run into Erie for a bunch of stuff. And by the time I got done, came back and I got online and started to try and find like the schematics for this circuit board, and I ended up eventually joining the forum for Speeduino and went in there and made a post and commented about my predicament of not getting any spark out. The thing writes and everything, it's recognized, it sees it, and the triggers work on the VR conditioner, so if that's working I should see an output, but no outputs. So one guy did post back and asked me to post the tune so they could go through it. So I figured out how to copy that, send it, and then he came back and said, well, the tune looks sane. He goes, by the way you're sounding, he says it sounds like the software is fine, but the firmware software sounds fine, but it seemed to be a hardware problem. And he asked if I assembled the board myself, because this was a kit. The newer ones are SMD, surface mounted, and they don't have through hole stuff on it, so it's all computer pick and place. So, but he did send me. I also asked for a schematic, if anybody had a schematic, and he posted a schematic for. This is a version 0.4.3D, and this one he posted was for a 0.4 point something else, but he goes, it should basically give me what I was looking for. Which it did. So I went through, and he came back and said, well, you got to figure out, what's causing that problem before you can go any further. I was like, yeah, that's the reason for the post. I need help trying to figure it out. So he wasn't really much of a help after that. But because he did post the schematics, I was able to go through and find out that what pins coming out of the Arduino board, this guy here, which pin comes out to trigger these two MOSFET drivers right here. These are the MOSFET drivers. Signal comes out of those, triggers this MOSFET driver. When it goes in and comes out, the output voltage of that is either it's set by the little jumper, the connection that's underneath this, whether it's this jumper right here, 5 volt or 12 volt, and this is set for 12. So you should see a 12 volt signal coming out. So when I checked the pins out, they come out here. I was doing the hardware test. I found a hardware test on in the software from a video that showed how to go in and trigger any of the ignition coils or the fuel injectors. That's all it can test, is just those 4 circuits. So when I tested it to check for an output on the Arduino, I had the output here, and then it goes from there into the chip. So I had to look up this chip and find the pin output was in the schematic, but I had to look it up to make sure they were the right chips. And these are different chips than the one in the schematic, but they're both MOSFET drivers. So it turns out pins 2 and 4, 5 and 7 are the ins and outs of each chip. One chip does 2 channels, the other does the other 2 channels. And it's powered by 12 volts or 5 volts. This thing has a wide range of voltage, all the way up to like 22 volts. But anyway, so I checked the inputs to the pins for every one of them, and they all worked. All 4 channels for the ignition worked. So I was like, all right, that's plus. So then I checked the outputs on each one, and all 4 outputs worked. So I said, okay, the next thing is it goes into these tiny little resistors right here by the LEDs. Check those. Sure enough, I got 12 volts in, 12 volts out, and then it goes right from there into the LEDs. So then I got looking at the LEDs, and I'm wondering, did I do that? So I looked up LEDs for how to wire them, because they're polarity sensitive, positive, negative. When you get them, one leg's long, one leg's short, and the layout on the boards has a square pad, like these are the fuel injector ones here. You can make it out, but there's square pads and round pads. Turns out the square pads are grounds and the round pads are positive. Well, it turns out when I made this board, I put every one of those in backwards. So that's why they weren't triggering. But I was getting power, everything up to it, all the triggers were working. So I broke out soldering iron, pulled them all out, reversed them all, cleaned up pads and reversed them, put them back in, Hooked up the power. I had to hook up a 12 volts from my power supply in the house to feed 12 in, and then when you plug in the Arduino to the computer, that supplies the 5 volts, which the electronics, all the circuitry uses. And then I went in and did the test, and sure enough, every one of them works now. All 4 ignition channels were outputting, and all 4 injector outputs are working, even though I'm not going to be using the injectors, but I did change them around. So I was like, alright, there's nothing left to do other than put it back into play and try it. So I brought it out here, plugged it all in like you see it, hit the key, cranked it over. This thing's blinking away, but still nothing on the outputs. I was like, really? So I was like, well, maybe they're just, because this is only, on cranking, it's only 4.5 milliseconds is all the faster the signal is going to the LEDs. So I went and turned the lights off, come back over, hit the key again, cranked it, nothing, and then, after about 2 seconds of cranking, then they started working. Everything started lighting up. The triggers for the injectors were firing, the triggers for the coils were firing, and I also took and hooked up one of my plug wires. These are just sitting in there. I hooked up the plug wire to a plug, set it out here, and sure enough, it was sparking, and I could hear the other coil over here clicking also. So I've got spark. It's working. And since the last video, I mentioned mounting these. So that's bolted through there with a cap screw, an Allen head cap screw bolt, stainless with a bushing. And the other side's the same way. This one I mounted vertical. But these leads are going to get cut down when I get those terminal ends for these things. So these will all be shortened right up. Again, I've got these things wired. So this is cylinder 2, this is cylinder 4, and then the same over there. This is cylinder 3, which is here, and this one's cylinder 1 for there. So it works. Big relief. So that's all done. Now the only thing left, and I don't need the coolant temp and air temp, but I do want to tap into the coolant temp. I'm wondering if I'll be able to piggyback off of the coolant sensor out here and feed it in there, so I have a coolant temp reading that can be used to control timing in advance or retard if it gets too hot, and then if it's cold it can increase the timing a little bit based on temperatures. And then also that's engine coolant. And then the air temp sensor, I can just put an air sensor anywhere in here. It doesn't have to be in the intake, because if I leave this like this so it's sucking in air in here, it's going to be the same air going in here as in there without having to run a bung into here. Another option would be to pull this out, put a T-fitting in there, and put an air temp sensor in there. So I don't want to weld any more bungs. I'm kind of tired of welding bungs. I got enough bungs to weld up on the oil tank. So ignition system's working finally. And then after that I decided to work on the tail. So I got out I bought a 5/16 bolt I mentioned, stainless bolt. And let me see, let me grab my light real quick for you. I made the fittings to hook the cables to the arms. Alrighty, if we can see that. It's hard to tell on this, but there's the arms. This thing is so bright, let me turn it down to the lower setting. Alright. So I made these pieces. It's 5/16 diameter, 3/8 inch long with a 3/32 hole. And then on the top, I drilled a 16th inch hole for the cotter pin. So I made those two, run the cable through there, and then I found some aluminum, turned them down to 1/4 inch, 3/32 hole, and then I put them on there and used my hydraulic crimping tool to crimp these ends on. So now these go all the way up into the rudder pedal assemblies. So this is done down here. So this doesn't matter if it's like that, because when one pedal pulls, the other goes slack, and they'll both stay tight as they work. And I measured the travel from here to here, and it's like 1 1/8 of an inch travel. This still has a little play in it because it's a little longer since I took a bunch of the stuff out of there. So I still either have to tap the thread a little longer on this, or just add a spacer in there to finish tighten that up. But essentially, this end is done. Oh, I still got my camera mount on there. I gotta take off. So now, into the cockpit, I went ahead and put the pedal assemblies back in. you can see the pedals are all hooked back up. I've got the rudder cables hooked up to the lower position on there to cut down on the travel of the rudder, to make the rudder travel a little less, make it less sensitive. Got the springs just temporarily hooked up there. But before, make it out, the cable was in this top hole, and originally it was way up here like an inch. And I moved it there, and that made a world of difference. So I felt it still has too much rudder sensitivity, so I dropped it down. These are the two stock locations from the plans. So that's all done, hooked back up. And then I did drill, make it out, but there's another hole under there, underneath that flat bar, for the rudder cables attached to. A little tight to see in here, but here's the cables. So they're all done. That's pulled tight. And this one's pulled tight, so if I pull on it, and it just moved a tiny bit. Now, see if we can see if this one moves over here. Pull on this side. I hate these trouble weights. I truly, truly do despise these old-fashioned trouble weights. You're probably not gonna see the travel on that bottom cable as I pull up it. It moves an inch, a little over an inch. Anyway, the hole I put in these arms. Sorry about the trouble, but you just can't get in here. So that hole there, when these pedals are both tight, touching and equal, this bar is vertical on both of them. So then it moves forward, and the travel on the rudder cable, steering cables need to move an inch. So that worked out to about 2 inches up from the pivot point. So I'm probably going to be able to wire these up, hook these cables up. One cable still. I just have to cut it. A lot of this, I don't need all this. All this up here. I'll still trying to figure out how I want to go about anchoring them to the pedals. But essentially they're going to come up in here like that. So the rudder cable will still give me full travel. And this will give me my 1 inch of travel on the pedals. Get this light off. One second. Not cooperating. Oh, there it goes. Come on. Damn thing. My original idea was to put these in there, but since I can get full travel out of the pedals, I don't have to worry about this thing. Now those might become necessary if I still determine that the pedals, the tailwheel steering needs to be less than it is. I don't know what the angle is on it, so. But anyway, so the next thing is finish up those, get this box mounted up underneath there, possibly see if I can tie into the coolant temp sensor, air temp sensor. There's no air temp sensor on the motor. The air temp sensor on the original fuel injection, I believe, is in the mass air meter. The later cars, they put an air temp sensor right in the meter. So I'm back down to plugging that vent, and now it's a matter of getting the oil tank started, getting the belt tensioner, getting this plate made. But right now I'm broke, man. I spent all my money. I got no money left. So I got to work this week, make money. So I'm just waiting on these. They just got shipped today from Texas. So it should be here by like next Wednesday. Last thing I ordered from Texas, it took 3 or 4 days. So I might have them for the weekend. I'll get these done and they'll be finished. So the pedals, just finish up the cable work there. I'm just, like I said, still trying to figure out how I want to end the cables and attach it to the actual pedal assemblies. And then the rudder steering, tail steering's done, other than tightening up with the bushing, put the tire back on. I have to do a swing test to reposition the up and down limit switches so it turns the motor on and off, because again, that's electric. It has its own motor up in the tail. So get that done. Today, absolutely beautiful today. It was only in the mid upper 70s, and the humidity finally fell down to where it was actually, it's still a little humid, but it was really easy working out here today. So Here's that crimping tool again if you've never seen them before. This Harbor Freight, I think this is like $60–70 with those crimping dies on there. You get several sizes, so they'll go all the way up to battery lug sizes, you know. Like these ones were, I don't know if it says 16, but it's not 16 millimeter or anything like that. And it puts a hex crimp on them, but works really good, very good. I could have made those out of steel, but if there's a problem, if you ever buy any galvanized cable and the ends to make the teardrop on them to hook them up to stuff, they use an aluminum crimp on those, so that's what I went with. That's 6061 T6. So, alright, I think that's it, and I did, like I said, I did clean out everything. It's all vacuumed. I got the air hose. I vacuumed up as much as I could, hit it with an air hose, blew stuff around, vacuumed it again, so everything up here is all tied together. Let me get this cable out of here. I was pulling these cables through here, and one time it fell down across the power rail and sparked, but it didn't do anything to the cable. I just put a little black mark on it, but it's in a section there that's getting cut out anyway, so a lot of, there's probably 6 feet in there that's got to come out. Alright, I think that's going to about do her. I still need to order up some Adel clamps, to tie things in. This lean control will be hooked in once I get this plate made, so I got to get some money to buy some plate to finish that. But I guess my next step is to go ahead and get started on that oil tank. All this cranking on the motor, I don't want to really do it, so but I need to get some oil in there and get that stuff moving around. Finish that last coolant hose, get those exhaust pipes welded in, get a heat shield on it. So it's finally coming together. I don't think there's, and some people keep asking, when do I expect to have it done? I don't know. It'll be done. I was thinking I was going to be farther ahead than this, but some of this stuff was unexpected and just a little more time consuming than anticipated. So we're already at 17 minutes, so yeah, I might as well go ahead and stop it here so I don't have to splice it. Alright, again, appreciate everybody taking the time to watch my videos. Feel free to leave me any comments, questions, or concerns. I'll answer them as they come through, and appreciate everybody that leaves comments. Keep them coming, and we'll see what goes. So I'm going to go ahead and end her now, and I will catch you guys again this coming weekend. So I'm not touching this thing until the weekend. I mean, that thing was enough stress for 1 week. All right, everybody. I will see you guys again more than likely Sunday night. So for now, this is Dino Don out.